Welcome to We Are Women, Unapologetically, the podcast that talks about the good, bad, ugly, and awesome. Careers, life transitions, confidence, and everything in between. Because shift happens, but you don't have to do it alone.
Welcome to We Are Women Unapologetically. My name is Jessica Cumming. Today, I am joined by Amber Swenor, a transformational leadership strategist, Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and founder of Soul Seed Strategy. She helps leaders and teams align identity, culture, and strategy so they can lead with clarity, confidence, and impact. Her work is also shaped by an unexpected edge. She is the frontwoman of a metal band called Morningstar, where performance, presence, and authenticity are absolutely not optional. That combination of executive strategy and rock band energy gives Amber a perspective that is both grounded and powerful. She's helping leaders stay connected to who they are, even under pressure. Amber, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I have to say, this is the first metal band person I've ever had on the show, metal band woman. Actually, I think it's probably the first time I've had anyone that is part of a band on the show. So you are a first for that.
Great.
So
I love setting new records.
everything that we just discussed, you said a lot of them. How did this girl that I met 30 years ago in Wisconsin end up building this $1 million business, becoming a metal front woman, writing a best-selling book? Like, that's just crazy.
We do come from a similar humble beginning, rural background. So it is fun to look at all the threads that connect. I go all the way back to the beginning because there's so many threads along the way. From the time I was really young, I felt this burning passion to make a difference in the world and help other people. I didn't know exactly how that would look. From a young age, I would write things down that someday I'm going to write a book to share about the challenges I'm overcoming to help other people. And I was pretty young when I had that awareness and that understanding. So I think I was really intuitive and self-aware, but I didn't have the language for it or the understanding for it back then. A lot of it in my childhood showed up as making me wrong for being too sensitive, or all the things you learn about and learn how to shut yourself down. So I grew up in rural Wisconsin, extremely hardworking family. I became first generation in my family to graduate high school as well as then go to college. Through all of it, I had a higher trust that the challenges I was going through, or the things that felt really hard, or the times I felt like I'm not worthy of this, struggled with my self-confidence, even though I appeared very confident. Like, you knew me back in middle school and high school, and I was someone who people saw as very expressive, and I was friends with a lot of people, and I would speak up. But I still also had a lot of self-editing that I was doing. Through the whole journey, I'd had to keep trusting that any struggle I had was worth it to put myself in a more aligned place, trusting that I was heading somewhere that was creating more of the life that felt good for me.
I did know you as the confident person in school. And I remember that you would dress unapologetically in the way that you wanted to dress. You would say what you wanted to say, and you were friends with everyone. It wasn't like the normal clique that you would see in a lot of middle school and high school. Now, are you originally from that area, or did you?
I moved there around 11 years old. I was from southern Wisconsin, and that was a really big shift. I remember it being shocking to me that everybody was related to everybody. And people went to school where the teachers were like their aunts and their parents. Because even though I had come from not a huge school before, nobody in the town was related. And so that was its own experience, which there was a lot that I ended up loving. But I remember really struggling with the judgments that felt like they could come from the community, especially when you're not born and raised somewhere. There's sometimes that, well, do you have the name? And so I definitely think I was a bit of a disruptor coming into that community and getting involved. And I had not been from a farm, but I got really involved in FFA, and I raised animals because I loved the ag teacher and the leadership opportunities. But there was definitely a fair amount of, even from adults, that judgment about you don't fit in here. And that was challenging.
It's interesting you say that, because I moved there right around the same age. I was about 12 when I moved there. I did grow up in a small town as well, but a lot of people up there were related, or they knew one another, because it was a town of 10,000 people. But
Where we
then
moved?
no, where I
Okay.
was originally
Like,
from was a town of
okay, okay.
10,000
However, where
people.
we moved to, but anyway, keep going. Okay.
I remember getting up there and it's isolating, living out in the country. It was a quarter mile down the driveway, dirt roads, all these different things. And I remember the first day of school and you walk in because everyone knows that you're the new person because your class is 30 people, if that. And I remember they were like, "Oh, so where did you move from?" Well, I told them where I'd moved from. And it just so happened that some of the people that lived there were related to people that I was friends with, and we rode the bus together. It was so insane to know those connections. So it did. It was a
Yeah.
small town, but even then, I would get judged, right? So it was hard to fit in when everyone is related, knows everyone. And y'all, when we say small, I mean, this is like, it's
I'd say
crazy.
to
I mean,
people,
my
if you could
graduating
stand
class,
and look down the hallway and you see from senior level 12 all the way down to the pre-K, like you can see it at the other end of the hallway. It's all in one building.
yeah, all in one building. It is just crazy. When you were there, and I know that you said that you got involved because of the egg teacher, love him. That was actually why I got involved in FFA as well. At first, I remember going to the meeting to learn more about FFA. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy is completely amazing. I know that he helped shape so many people's lives.
Yes.
I remember that he was great in getting you involved with that. Can you tell me, is that when it was lit that you wanted to look at being in front of audiences more
That was
and
definitely
doing
stepping stones in elementary school. I was in second grade signing myself up for forensics competitions. And I would come home and tell my parents, and they were like, "We have no idea what that is, and we don't know where to take you." So I did start it earlier, but it was developed at a deeper level. Mr. A really invested a ton of time with me. And one year, accidentally, we broke the FFA rules by me entering too many categories and I won all of them. And we didn't know that, which I kind of have to laugh at because that was also classic Mr. A. He wasn't a rule follower. Like we kind of aligned.
oh,
I would rehearse and he'd say, "Miss Amber, you don't worry about that timeline. You give your winning speech." And I will never forget, it was supposed to be 8 minutes max, and mine went to about 8 minutes and 14 seconds. And that's why I lost at the national contest because he just felt like the rules were negotiable. I want to connect this story. There's an amazing woman, Patty Hendrickson, who is the first professional speaker I really remember seeing. I saw her in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I watched her and I said, I'm going to be like her someday. I still live in Wisconsin and I'm involved in our National Speakers Association now. And it's amazing. When I got involved at a meeting, in walks Patty Hendrickson, who 20 some years earlier was the one who I saw and felt like would I could do what she was doing. So I just love again this theme of threads connecting. The small town where we met, Mr. A, even though I didn't have a farming background, like he invested in me and I grew so much. I definitely think there's, whether we're conscious of it or not, so many things in all of our growing up experience that impacts us as adults.
absolutely agree with you. I was watching the news the other night and with everything unfortunately happening with the war, I remember having one specific history teacher where we had to learn all of this. And I remember learning people come into power and how people leave power. Anyway, so I say that
Right.
because it is interesting the threads that you think about at the most random times and how they've impacted your life.
Absolutely.
Once you left the small town you grew up in, what was your plan?
My plan was to get to UW-Madison, Wisconsin for college. I always knew I wanted to go to Africa someday, didn't know much about it. And I knew I wanted to have some sort of a rock band and I wanted to help people. So in college, I studied abroad to Kenya. While I was there, it was such a transformative, amazing year. I still have this just like deep love story with Kenya and I have friends there. But it was during that year that I realized I really feel like I want to pursue this having a rock band. I came back after my study abroad. I graduated with a political science degree. The more I learned about poli sci, I realized I want to help people, but I hate the BS parts of politics. I wanted to leave the small town, but it took me a little bit because after college, I found myself living back there in this transition period. My really good friend knew I wanted to start a band. There was an ad in a shopper's guide, like where they sell farm equipment and advertise giving away like farm cats. There was an ad wanting a singer for a band. I answered that ad. The guy who placed it was Brandon. He was starting a band. He plays guitar. I sing, who's now my husband. We met 18 years ago forming that band. And once we got together, then we moved out of the area together and moved back to Madison. That was really, it was like I knew the next thing was go to college, see the world, start a band, make money, and then each thing kept evolving from there.
You moved to Madison, you're starting this band, and, everyone that has dreams of doing this knows that it doesn't necessarily happen overnight to find success for a band.
Oh, no, and that a lot of
So,
it depends how you analyze success because, like, from a lot of standards, especially if you look at, are we like making money or a career of it? No, we've still not achieved that 18 years later, right? Being an artist, ooh,
I love the way that you just said it. It depends on what you define as success.
exactly.
Do you mind going deeper into that and what the success of Morningstar looks like to you?
With a lot of shared vision with Brandon, it has been an evolution of becoming more of our true selves and our true sound. In early years, that was really challenging. As an artist, you try to make music and put it out there, and we would put our first recordings on MySpace. And some people would dig it, but there was also a lot of criticism. It's our own unique sound. And so we would get this criticism where some people were like, your singer sucks. You need a man who can really scream. We were almost too heavy for the rock and roll crowd, but we were too light for the metal crowd. And so that's a big definition of success was that we said to ourselves early on, okay, like we're not striving to be the best. We're striving to live into our joy and passion. I would coach myself and say, if I get to the end of my life, am I going to look back and regret that I didn't do it? Or am I going to be proud of myself that I did? That's what helped me keep going, especially when you'd sometimes get the crappy online comments. Around 2017, 2018, it made a new evolution forward. That's when we became Morningstar. A shift happened around then where all the tides were turning and we started building a fan base and repeat fans. Anything that used to be critical, all the online feedback turned to love by being our sound and by showing up and being visible and continuing to do it. And so that's really the measure of success for me is, do we keep growing, challenging ourselves, but stay true to our sound and honestly just have fun and love with the fans and audience along the way? Because that's really special if people are willing to support you online, but also show up to shows when they have a lot of other things they could be doing.
Before we move on, I want to ask you, how did you land on the name Morningstar for the band?
Naming a band is a challenge. I hope I never have to rename another band. It was a conversation, a song we were working on with the story from the Bible and this concept of who gets to be the rule maker of what's considered light versus dark, positive versus negative. A lot of our music has a positive message, but we address the things that could be viewed as dark subjects and bringing them to light. We sing about mental health. Our latest song, it took us 18 years, but we finally had a metal charting song, and it's about authenticity, but about the pain of hiding behind a mask. So that's what Morningstar name represents to us. Even though we're not a religious band, it's rooted in that idea of like what gets cast as a in heaven versus out of heaven, as a positive versus negative, because I believe to be a whole self, we're all a mix of light and shadow. And we've got to have the real conversations. And that's what we try to bring to our music.
I know the exact song that you're talking about. I remember when that first launched, and I was so proud of you and everything that you had accomplished. What does the future look like?
Releasing more music, continuing to write, continuing to play more shows. We would really like to do some bigger tours. That's our goal. And it's always a matter of having the goal and saying, what can we control, the steps that we can control. Our future is to keep doing what we're doing because we love it.
For anyone out there looking to start a band or already in a band and thinking, I want to grow my band, what advice would you have?
Embrace online marketing. People love to stay connected. They love to see behind the scenes. I think the big shift the last few years, especially for local regional bands, I find that people enjoy way more seeing the real stuff. Enjoy it as you're doing it, because if you're just trying to be rigid and like, well, I just want to be huge or I just want to have these millions of streams, like some people get those breaks, but you've really got to ask yourself like why you're doing it. Are you doing it because it's a passion and you love it? Most artists that I know, that's why. So I encourage people to find the joy, because the reality for a lot of bands is it's really hard to make money and it takes a lot of energy and effort and sacrifice, time away from families, time away from jobs. And so find the areas of joy.
On the areas of joy. Love that. Two things that popped into my head, the authenticity of it all. We are in a world where AI is everywhere. There's been talks about songs written by AI, and there was a chart topping song written by AI. What are your thoughts on AI when it comes to the music industry?
It makes me, people can make and listen to whatever they want. However, I think that there needs to be full disclosure. If anything, you're listening to something that's AI, full stop. I feel not okay if you don't know, because it isn't the same thing as real people. So if you want to listen to it or you like it, that's cool for you. As an artist, it's really disheartening knowing that anybody can spin up anything that can all of a sudden get bazillions of streams when there's real people giving real artistry and creating their art. I have a concern about the more that we're hearing and consuming things that are AI, how does it affect us emotionally? Because there's frequency to sound. AI exists. We're not stopping it. I am really selective about the ways that I use it. I will not use it is outsourcing my own creativity and my own voice. I don't want it to replace what I create, because that's the whole point that makes me human.
Seeing behind the scenes, seeing that you are a real person.
Yeah.
We are in a world where authenticity is lost. I know that authenticity is your word, mine is unapologetic. Both are all about showing up, being true, being real to who you are. We are in a truth epidemic where people don't know who they can trust. How do you stay authentic but still show the polished version?
I try things on, I test it. Sometimes if there's something that's uncomfortable, it's like, is it uncomfortable because it's stretching me, or is it uncomfortable because it feels in a violation to my integrity, or it's a limiting belief or a wound that I need to work through before showing up like that? I always am being very self-aware and really sitting with why I'm hesitating about showing up a certain way. For me personally, I think it's important to be vulnerable, but I have built circles of support that aren't visible online if I'm still working through something. Some people, they choose to show up and share it all, and that's okay for them, but that's not what I feel like I want to do, right? Because it's not being fake. I want to feel safe if I'm working through some deep, deep stuff. I'm going to work through that with a coach, a counselor, my close friend group, my close mastermind.
I love that you said that, because even though it's being vulnerable and how you're showing up, oftentimes online, you want to make sure that you're showing the scar. So creating that safe space around you, making sure that, well, for you and me both, right? It's not putting everything out there,
Mhm.
because once it's out there, it's out there. And that's the challenging part about it too. Now, we grew up in a generation where we didn't have to worry about cell phones, and it can be damaging what can be found on the internet 5, 10, 15 years from now for a lot of these influencers that are younger.
Yes. And once it's out there, it invites people's opinions. And that's a lot of energy to manage and isn't always good for people's mental health to stay in a constant online battle over defending your own thing, especially if it's still really raw or vulnerable.
I'd like to shift gears. You have your Soul Seed strategy, your marketing agency. Tell us about that, how you decided to start this agency and how you took it to $1 million business in 4 years.
So I started my business 11 years ago. It had a different name when we started. I had come out of television advertising, where I built a book of business, working with a lot of small local businesses, and realized I was good at seeing their whole picture of their business and developing their positioning, their messaging. A lot of these businesses had an issue where they needed a variety of marketing services, but it was really hard for them to hire all those positions in house, right? So I started my agency to serve that type of business where they have a marketing budget, but it doesn't make sense for them to bring all the experts in house. I also had this sense that I really was meant to work with people on their leadership, their development of who they are, because I could see that the things they were deciding out here, it's controlled by how they're operating as a leader. Sometimes we would drive a bunch of business, but if they didn't have a team that could fulfill that, like all the advertising money, it wasn't working as a whole system. A few years into the business, I started experimenting with offering leadership coaching programs. It was really amazing, the feedback I was getting. And so I built my agency alongside of what I started to build the leadership programs and training and retreats. About 6 years in, I rebranded to become Soul Seed Strategy. And over time, we did less and less marketing and started presenting ourselves as leadership and brand strategy and more of the consulting. And so that's where we've landed now. In the early years, I had a full-time team. I wanted to transition the agency to have someone come into ownership. That I was looking at doing previous to the pandemic. Pandemic happened, it put everything top sideways. A whole bunch of things changed. Through those few years of just not finding the right person to take over the agency, I said, okay, then I guess I'm just going to fully step into this rebrand. And some clients, as they leave, I'm not going to replace them. And then I downsized my team because the model shifted. A lot more of our work is leadership and team development.
What are some of the things that you do for the majority of your clients now?
Some of the biggest is working directly with a business owner who tends to have 5 to 10-ish employees, where they started the business, they have been delivering all the services, but they're now stepping into this experience of how to become a CEO. How do I get this business to be able to potentially operate without me? Even if they don't want to exit the business, they want to give it the structure and the legs that it can be successful without them. There's an element of identity transformation that we do in support, because they're literally no longer the person that started the business. It's about who they're becoming for the vision they have of where they want to take it. I have a certified transformational coach, so I do that work with them. But then we also bring in the strategy and team development. And that's what I love. I get to bring both sides together.
What would you say has been the most challenging thing about starting your business, but then saying, you know what, I'm shifting, I want to look at evolving and changing your business?
Oh boy. So this is very personal to me. For me, I had tons of internal limiting beliefs, fears. I think we all have them. But for me, becoming a business owner was the opportunity to open up every fear, every limiting belief, every wound. And I don't want to scare anyone. Like, I think it's an opportunity to lean into it. Not everyone has the same journey, but there just weren't a lot of the things I needed in a foundation in my growing up that I needed in order to trust myself as a business owner. So I had a whole lot of unpacking to do around self-worth, around self-confidence. I felt like I had to be the nice person, and I was carrying way too much responsibility. And that showed up in different ways of not holding team members accountable. And I had to learn how to do that. And it showed up in early on just doing more for clients and being afraid to charge appropriately for it. So I had loads of that work to transform. And when it came time of trusting my evolution, it brought up some money wounds, because that was a big driver for me, that I knew I wanted better opportunities and I wanted security, where I had seen a lot of people in my growing up in our family that did not have financial security. And I knew I didn't want that, and how that showed up sometimes in their lives. That was a legitimate concern and fear. What did I value most, and what did I want to create when I pivoted my business? I had to get okay with the chance that I might make a lot more money. I might make the same, I might make less. But the answer I came to was, I feel called enough in this direction, and I'm now becoming unhappy enough I feel stuck enough over here that I'm willing to take the risk to make the leap, because it's not only about money, but it's about answering something deeper within my own soul, my own calling.
It's interesting because one of the things that you mentioned, and something that popped up for me, is you had talked about money wounds and you had to be okay with the money. And then I remember you posted something on Facebook. You were flying in first class and you said you bought the ticket because if you weren't going to sit there, someone else would, and why not you?
Mhm.
So many times, you know, people will walk past that first class section and they'll judge and they'll think, okay, well, I'll never be there. I'm so jealous. But when you actually allow yourself those things to happen, the mindset shift of why not me? I think that that was really important. So, can you talk about these mindset shifts that you've had throughout time and what advice you would give to people that are in need of encouragement when it comes to a mindset shift?
Thank you. I love that you had that memory. I had to work through my own stuff about posting that. Also, about the judgments of different people. It must be nice when they have no idea about what it takes to get somewhere. My approach is to always just go inward and recheck in with what's aligned for me. What do I value? Where do I want to go? How do I need to be supported and support myself or supported by others in order to get there? And so there was the self-worth piece, but I also remember with the first class ticket, whenever I can justify the expense, I do that because there's also the part around being supported energetically. I'm energetically sensitive. I do not like how I feel when I'm squished with other people. There's a cost to that that I noticed when I would arrive places. So there's
Yeah.
a practical side of it around recognizing what do I need to feel good and be successful, and then removing judgment from it. If you feel like you desire something or want something, but you notice yourself talking yourself out of it, go deeper into why are you talking yourself out of it? Because sometimes it might be a smart decision. Like, you know what? I could use that money better somewhere else. But sometimes, like taking care of ourselves so we can show up energized is the most valuable investment. And that's where it really gets to the self worth piece.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And I'm the same way. One of the reasons that post resonated with me so much is because there were quite a few times where I would get upgraded even for free. And when that would happen, I could notice a difference in myself. And so then I started buying some first class tickets and I remember being judged for it. Oh, well, you must just be rich because this is what you're doing. But it comes back to I deserved it. I worked hard for it, but also I know where I want to be when I get to my destination. So I just, like I said, that was just one post that really resonated with me. And I wanted to make
So
sure that I
much.
brought it up.
Thank you for telling me that because I'm telling you, that was a moment of stopping judging myself. But the reason I want to show up, especially in my work with women like us, is to exactly what you just shared so that if anyone else is feeling the same experience, they know that we're in this together. Live your life.
Yeah.
You're worth it. Do what's aligned for you and let go of the judgments of the haters. Do not let their voices be bigger than the ones who are supporting.
And that's a great message because we forget about the people that do support us because we let the other voices be louder. It's a challenge. But once you realize who your true tribe is and who your true supporters are, it's amazing the energy that you can get from them. There's so much to talk about with everything that you've done. I want to shift into the book.
Sure.
Tell us about your book
Like,
to
oh, I have a copy.
be like, you know what? Oh, awesome. How did you get to the point where you're like, I'm just going to do it? I am going to sit down. I'm going to write the book.
If they're writing a book, it's like, are you writing it really specifically to teach something like businessy or more for like a personal heart calling reason? Mine was that real personal reason. I wanted it to deliver value and not just be a memoir. I call it mine a memoir-esque a leadership development book, personal leadership. It was something that I kept journaling on for years and years. And it's so wild because even before I worked for myself, I found a journal the other day from years before I started working for myself. And I was writing excerpts for my book someday. It's fascinating that it was the same type of ideas that I had been working through for 20 years. And I was able to see them from new perspectives at different stages of the journey. It's just so interesting that some of the same core fears and goals were that I was working through them at different levels. And so I really started getting serious about it around 2018, worked with my first coach kind of book writing program, and it gave me some insights, but it just wasn't clicking and getting me there. So then I really felt worth issues, self-doubt that this any good? Am I actually a decent writer? And just writing on social and writing my blog helped validate that whenever I would get feedback or even my email marketing, I just kept writing, even if I didn't know if it would go in the book. I just need to keep writing and see what people respond to tell myself, am I a decent writer? What made a good shift was around 2021. I found someone who's a hybrid publisher, but also does coaching and editing. I was able to invest in something smaller with her where I would give her my first few paragraphs. She edited it and gave it feedback. From her reading that and giving it back to me and giving me the confidence where she said, Amber, you have a solid story here. You have a clear voice. This is an amazing outline. Like you've got something here. And I didn't feel like she was telling me that to get my business. Like that was not her way. And having that person who I trusted and respected, and she had had a lot of successful projects, you just needed that validation that I didn't suck. And it was like, I'm okay, great, let's work together. And I'm going to keep going. And so I think it's really important, anyone exploring that journey, getting into writing groups or getting a coach, getting, and if you're getting negative feedback or it doesn't feel supportive, just keep going until you find someone that can help nourish you along. And yes, it's important to be able to get some of the criticisms to make it stronger, but I was at a point where I just needed someone that would help me recognize that it was a story worth telling.
A story worth telling. We talk about these threads and we talk about time and all these different things. But I remember not too long ago, not to not to steal any light away, but
Thank
I
you,
remember
especially if it's about your story.
it was interesting because I remember sitting there one time and thinking, I don't have a story worth telling. I was like, I don't have any stories. I've just lived a normal life. And then I started unpacking everything that has happened in my life, whether they be wonderful things, whether they be traumatic things. But I realized that that was the moment that I was like, oh my gosh, no, I have a story worth telling. And that's part of what got me into my own when it comes to speaking. Just because at first I wasn't being vulnerable. And then all of a sudden, once I realized, no, this is a story worth hearing, that's when things started to move for me too.
Yeah.
It can take time. And I think, it takes work. It takes work on yourself. It takes working with other people. But at the end of the day, we all have a story worth telling.
Yes.
I know you mentioned you would advise people to get a coach, work with writing groups. But when it comes to authenticity or vulnerability of telling someone's story, how would you encourage them to be willing to open up?
I love and completely agree that everyone has a story worth telling, right? And I think that maybe that doesn't mean that everyone's going to write a book. That's okay. But it's about connecting one on one with a friend, with a loved one, like starting with the relationships that matter most. There may be things that you've not revealed to each other that help bring a greater awareness and understanding of each other. I start where you are. Like, if that means, like, no judgment around, maybe that means having an honest conversation with a friend. But maybe that means maybe you're at a point where you wanting to be more visible to a community that you work with. Maybe that means a social media post. Maybe that means starting an email list where people are opting in because they want to hear that kind of information. So there's different ways, but giving yourself permission and try out your shaky Bambi legs. I always recommend starting with somewhere that feels safe. I help people get over their fears and make the big, bold moves. But I believe the only way to do that and bring your nervous system along for the journey is by starting with something that's safe enough. It might still be scary, but you don't need to make yourself go from, oh my gosh, I've never told anyone this, to like, I'm supposed to put it in a book and make a whole live stream. No, it could be calling up a friend and having that conversation to get it out and practice it and see how that feels. Because sometimes just naming it and talking about it makes it a whole lot less scary.
You're right. A lot of times we stay in our own heads and we can't be our own worst critic.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes just talking, saying it out loud. I like to spew it out there, throw it at the wall, see what sticks. I like to talk through things. Uh, and that's been my nature. And then there's some people that are like, uh-huh, yep. No, they don't follow. Like I'm literally taking them along on the journey.
I relate. I call it speaking your inner dialogue.
Yeah.
I have found I do the same thing. What I've learned is some people understand and respect it and can hold space for it. And some people can judge it and think it means that you don't know what you're doing or talking about. But that's not the case. So I just wanted to say that for you and anyone else who's relating, safe space is important. But
Yeah,
sometimes you need to
it
talk and
is.
be heard so you can process it out.
Yeah. I know for me personally, right, especially when we were growing up, I was alone by myself a lot of the time. And so for me to just have someone else to be able to have those conversations with, or just say it to someone else besides the dog,
Yeah.
just to be heard. I agree with you that get out of your own head and find a safe space. And another thing that people can do if they don't have someone right away, record it. I've had people that say that they record their thoughts a lot and then they can come back to them, they can process them, hear them almost from a different lens. Still their words, but they hear it in a different way. That's great. Talking through it, I'm a huge fan of that. So, speaking of talking, I know that you had been speaking all along, even as a little girl. This is something that you were really passionate about. When did you start speaking professionally and what was that like?
Early in my business, there is a shift. In the early years in my business, I was doing a lot more education for small businesses, teaching about marketing. A lot of that would sometimes be unpaid or low paid, but then it's an opportunity of being in a room with clients. The shift was really around the same time that my business was transforming. For years, had felt like I'm really meant to speak, to deliver, like just to speak to where the value is delivered from speaking in and of itself. And I got really serious with that around 2022. So about 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago at this point. And that's really grown in a whole new level in the last year. That also required a lot of my own growth and constantly evolving and clarifying and really honing where I'm meant to make a difference and for what audiences. It's been a cool journey. There's so many ways people can speak, and that's part of it too, defining what does that look like for someone?
Any advice for someone that's starting out for speaking?
Clarifying what their goals and reasons are. Because if it's a personal reason, like feeling like you just want to tell your story, that's beautiful, but that's not going to get you paid, right? It's okay to start out with live streams or sitting in circle with people or hosting your own events, especially for coaches and consultants. I've done that for years, hosting my own workshops, my own live events. But for people who are like, no, I want to be a professional paid speaker, really looking at what's the problem or the goal that you're helping to solve for that audience, because that is so important. It's about that audience and what that event planner is willing to buy. And the more that I focused on that with being true to me, the more that I focus on where is this audience? What behavior am I helping them to shift? And what is the outcome they're going to get after it? The more and more I focus on that, the easier it becomes to get booked more because I can lead with what's the value to the customer. And I think that a lot of speakers that want to be a paid speaker, that's important. I think a lot of us can get stuck sometimes in being about us when we really need to be about the audience.
I read something the other day that said, if you lead with I help, people are already glassing over.
Yeah.
Like, what is the pain
Yeah.
point? What is the value you bring? And to your point, I think these days everything ties back into marketing. I was talking to a friend of mine, a business owner that was here. We were talking about the fact that you can have a wonderful product or a wonderful message, but if it's not what your audience wants, you're not going to be successful. It may be what they need, but you can't tell your audience what they need. You need to give them what they want, but still solving the problem. So I want to ask you, what is next for you? What does this year
Yeah.
look like? What does maybe the next 24 months look like for you?
It's a continuation of reaching people through the speaking that I'm doing, continuation of what we're doing with Morningstar by putting out new music and pushing ourselves further, hopefully expanding into playing new places we've never played before. There will be another book in the future. It's brewing, like it's that process again where it's journaling ideas all over the place and it'll be taking shape this year. And there is something in my back pocket that I've worked on and off, but there will be some point in the future. It won't be this year. I've been working on a screenplay for a movie. With this question, it's like, it may not sound like the huge flashy thing, but I feel really good that it's actually enjoying and being present for and delivering the impacts that I've really laid the foundation for the last how many years, right? To fully set me up to be more booked like I am now, doing the shift in the work that my business was doing. Because when I made that evolution, it wasn't like an immediate you start changing and then you get full on all the new services. It took a couple years of rebuilding that funnel, so to speak. So that's what this year is. Continuation, keep building excellence within what I'm doing and start laying the framework for the future book and see where the space comes to work on that movie when the timing feels right.
I do want to ask this question because we've talked about a lot. I mean, this was a jam-packed episode. How do you find the time for all of this? How do you balance it all?
Well, I don't do it all at once. So I kind of work rhythmically, and that works for me. I know some people, they like their same system 5 days a week. I actually work more seasonally and learning how to honor that. I do enjoy human design. That can help you understand how your energy works. I have huge bursts of massively productive. I can get done in 2.5 days what an average person gets done in 5. But the key is I've got to give myself off time or I'll burn out. I don't do all the things at all the same time. The reality is, if a couple things are at the top, something else has to drop a little. I'm always experimenting with how does that seasonality look in a way that works for me. And that's how I do it. But also, I have always been a master calendar planner. I live and love the calendar and I stick to it as much as possible, including I've learned how to build in breaks. I've learned how my energy works, that if I am not understanding how to put downtime into my calendar, I will crash and burn. And that is just as to be protected as the business meetings.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with you. I highly suggest to everyone 30 minutes every single day. Obviously, if you can do more, do more.
Mhm.
But even for some people, 30 minutes a day sounds like it's too much.
Mm.
In the world that we're living in and people working these long hours, they're working on weekends, at least having some sort of boundary that you can protect for your own time. Totally in alignment with you on that as
Yeah.
well. Is there anything else that we have not covered that you would like to discuss?
This was so fun. Oh, I don't think so. I'm like, oh, I got to come up with a good question for
No, you
you.
don't
Can
have
I
to
ask
come up with
you a
no.
question?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Jessica, at the end of this year, what's she going to be looking back on and celebrating?
This year's actually already started off different than what I had anticipated. Looking back at the end of this year, success of the podcast, as well as more speaking engagements and going back into the corporate world when it comes to leadership training and things like that. I did that for a long, long time. But what I'm doing now is so fun. To your point, it's like, what is successful? I'm so thankful that I'm to a point that I'm recording this from an Airbnb because I'm traveling more often than I had originally anticipated this year. So looking back at the end of this year, is just really continuing to learn, grow, and evolve myself, my business, and making that larger impact, more keynote speaking. Our lives have been very similar, even from little girls all of the way into our adult lives now. I didn't always have the tribe that I wish that I had had, and that's what I'm building out now, is the tribe that I wish that I had had for other generations and even women our age. You have definitely been an inspiration to me, and I appreciate you and applaud you for everything that you have done, not only for me, but for other women. It's great to be able to call you a friend and so humbled that you are willing to come on and share your experience.
Thank you. We'll have to have a
Yeah.
reboot celebration at the end of the year.
Let's do it. Maybe we can find a time where we'll be in the same location at the same time.
Yes.
Maybe even speaking together. That would be
So
awesome,
let's
right?
actually, that will happen.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yep.
All right. Thank you again for coming on, sharing your story. Amber, if any of the listeners, watchers out there want to get in contact with you, learn more about you, your speaking, your book, your marketing, your band, everything, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
My website, Amber-Swenor, Swenor, on my website will get you to all of that. I love connecting with people on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm working on getting my IG back since it was hacked.
The joys of social media, right? Yeah, you know you're making it when those things happen
Yeah.
too. For all the listeners and watchers out there, if this resonated with you, like, share it with a friend who needs to hear this message. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're looking for your own moment of clarity, I encourage you to download the Clarity in 10 or look at booking a clarity call with me. Until next week, stay fierce, stay bold, but most importantly, stay unapologetically you.